listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Okay, GM Shuffle, the big guy Michael Lombardi. I'm Patrick Meagher. Week 12 kicking off tonight in division with Pittsburgh. Surprise this year at Cleveland. Been a disaster. We'll get to that game coming up in just a bit. NFL news and notes to start, presented by Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka. Michael Lombardi, please drink responsibly. The Jets fired Joe Douglas. So all you and BB are always drink responsibly. Let's be fair. Joe Douglas was about to finish out his contract, but he didn't, because Woody Johnson, on his way to England to get some crumps, he said, "You gone." So Douglas is out. Let's go right to when you heard the news. Surprise, 30-64. Obviously, the quarterback decisions with Zach Wilson and now Aaron Rodgers. And the bottom line is the Jets at 3-8 are a disaster.
Disaster. You know what's funny? Do you think Woody, when he goes over there, does he have, Churchill every day at 3:00 had Dundee cake, right? You think he has Dundee cake? I don't even know what Dundee cake is, but I've read so much about it. He'd be playing some kind of card game and he'd have Dundee cake. Al Davis had German chocolate cake. It must be something about having cake in the afternoon. I don't know. Woody wears his hat. I mean, is he going to wear his hat over when he meets with?
He's going to wear the hat, the suit. Churchill used to do the interviews from the bathtub. Maybe Woody will wear the hat in the bathtub.
I mean, Joe Douglas got his life extended. I mean, he no longer has to deal with this knucklehead and have to take his phone calls and answer his stupid questions. I mean, look, it's a prestigious job to have. He had it for 6 years. He won 30 games. I didn't think he did a great job. I know he got A's in every one of his drafts. I understand that. I mean, he never had a bad draft, but for me, he never really built the team. He just drafted players. And of course, I think the biggest criticism is they never really aligned the organization, right? And that goes to Woody, because Woody is still here. Woody's still running this franchise. And what I don't think people understand is Woody is doing all this because his wife and Melania Trump, Trump's wife, are best friends. So he's going to go back and have Dundee cake over in England. But I think he wants to get everything set up before he leaves. I don't think he wants his brother Christopher to be doing the hiring. So when Trump gets inaugurated on the 17th or whatever day it is in January, the 20th or whatever, I think Woody wants to have his general manager in place and his head coach, and he wants to pick them because only he would know, right? Only he would know. So he's gotten rid of Douglas. That made it easy. So now he can go out there and he can start interviewing candidates. It's easy to interview the GM candidates. He's got to interview 2 minority candidates. So he'll start doing that. He'll call the league office. The league office will come in and tell him, hey, here's who I think you should talk to. He'll probably hire Jed Hughes, which is remarkable. Jed Hughes, never successful as a coach in the league, but somehow he's parlayed this into this. He's the advisor on how to pick coaches. Whoa, that's a whole other story. You read a book on that. So, and if you're not on Jed's top list, you're not getting an interview. And so it's just to me, it's just so completely bizarre. They have no chance. But more than anything, Patrick, with Woody running the team, who's going to want to come in here and take this over?
Well, let me ask you this way, because we're going to talk in a bit about the Giants, so the Mara and Tisch family. Tell me something about the Woody and the Johnson, obviously Johnson and Johnson heirs. Tell me something about Woody Johnson that we should know. This might work out for them because they're getting out in front of the Jags. They're going to move on. Most likely the Bears are going to move on. So I think maybe the presidential appointment is going to do them some favors here. Maybe they can get out in front of it a little bit. But tell us a little something about Woody and his management style.
Well, he wants to run it. And so his management style is what I would call divisive from within. So what he wants is to be like the United States government, have a House, have a Senate, and have a president, and basically no one control either one of the parties. So there's always stalemates. And who solves stalemates? Him. That's what puts him in power. So there's never any continuity or alignment. When we won in Oakland, it was because we did have continuity and alignment, because most of us agreed with what was happening, and Al was the dissenting vote, and he didn't agree. So when Al couldn't create conflict within the building, then he really had no role in the building. He wanted conflict in the building because who could solve conflict? Him. If you hate the coach and I hate the GM, or you hate the personnel, or you think this guy's wrong, then who solves the problem? He does. And so he's conflict based. That's why Woody's conflict based too. He's going to ask the GM questions about the coach. Then he's going to ask the coach questions about the GM. And he's going to try to see if he can split somebody. And then he's going to try to side with somebody. And then they all come back to him for the correct answer. That's how divisiveness can work and operate in organizational struggle. And I've lived it, and it doesn't work, right? And so they're anti. So his belief is he wants to have someone running the football and someone coaching the team. And yet he doesn't understand that it takes two people together working with the same philosophical beliefs that are set by the ownership, that the owner controls that. Look, this is what I want. I want the Jets to be this type of team. Okay, fellas, you put that team together. And then we're going to evaluate it. But he can't do that. He wants to itemize and nitpick and line item everything that goes on. You have this much in a budget, you have this much here. Oh, you're not doing that. You're not replacing this scout. I don't want you to do that. You might as well just name yourself general manager.
Okay, I have a question, because there was a report that came out that after the loss to the Broncos, Woody went to the front office and said, hey, maybe we should go Tyrod Taylor over Rodgers. You and I would agree Rodgers is not the same player. His numbers are fine. He doesn't have mobility. He doesn't have an offensive line. And oh, by the way, they extended the contract. So there's going to be a cap hit if they move on. Do you really believe Woody, the dictatorship, went to the front office after week 4 and suggested potentially making a quarterback change?
Yeah, I think what happened was Woody was meeting with these owners now are meeting with GMs and coaches on Monday. I mean, that happens in Cleveland all the time. The Haslam family comes in and meets with Stefanski and I'm sure Andrew Berry. Well, Woody was meeting with Saleh and Joe Douglas. And then what he wasn't hearing what he wanted to hear, right? He started to bring more people into the meeting. And what happens when you bring more people in the meeting? You got leaks. All of a sudden, those people start talking. So, yeah, I'm sure Woody probably said, hey, do you think we should go to Tyrod Taylor? And people probably smirked and laughed, and then Saleh probably stood up and said no, and then he fired Saleh. Like, he hasn't improved the team. Like, every decision Woody makes, I mean, they traded third-round pick for Devontae Adams. I'm told reliably that nobody wanted to do that other than Woody. But he's running it. And so when you got an owner that thinks he knows and he's not listening to anybody, part of the job of an owner is not to make decisions. The job of the owner is to listen. The job of the owner is to then ask really good questions. And if you do that, then you're going to get them to give you the best answer that you possibly can give. If you don't, then you're in trouble. So I think, to me, that's the biggest issue you have here. And again, I'll say this. Look, he's had Adam Gase, Mike McKagan. He's had Todd Bowles, John Itzik. He's had all these people. So whoever he hires is going to come in with this 100-day plan. Oh, I got this 100-day plan. Well, maybe you should take this, maybe instead of having a 100-day plan and looking forward, you should take a 100-day and look backwards. Like, why am I in this job? I'm not that talented. I'm not more talented than all these other people, right? I'm just not. So what couldn't they get done that I got to need to get done? Whereas most people look when they come into a job as what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Well, if you don't know the jungle, you can't handle the trails. And so the terrain in this jungle with Woody is dangerous. So whoever gets this job better figure out, why did Itzik fail? Why did McKagan fail? Why did Joe Douglas fail? Why did all these guys fail? They won't do that. They just think, oh, I'm going to come in and run my program. Well, it ain't going to work.
We need a new deal. Where's your boy FDR? So it's still the Jets. It's still a franchise that people look to, along with the Giants, which we'll discuss here on the GM Shuffle. Here's my question. Who's taking this job? You want a quarterback. Yeah. Rodgers is we've heard Kirby Smart. Michael, he owns college football. He's not leaving a place where he's making, $12, $14 million to go to the Jets in this upside-down franchise right now? Like, who's taking this job both in the front office and as a head coach?
Yeah, I think that's a really fair question, because look, if you're Ben Johnson, you're making really good money. Do you want to deal with this mess that everybody else has seen? You got Rodgers, who's got a $35 million option bonus on his contract. If they don't pick that up, he leaves behind huge debt. Right. And so he can't really play anymore. Like you said, he's going to be 42. Is he going to be better next year than he is this year? Of course not. He's trended in the wrong direction. His 21 year was great. His 22 wasn't. He missed 23, and his 24 is more like 22. So, like, where are we going here? I mean, it's just being fair. He's a Hall of Fame player, but look, let's face it. The biggest problem with all this is Brady. Brady's convinced people you can play into your 40s, and he was the anomaly. These anomalies hurt you. If you don't understand them as anomalies, that becomes a real problem, right? Brady playing in his 40s is an anomaly. Sean McVay being a great coach at 32 is an anomaly. You're not finding another Sean McVay. He's a great coach. They're anomalies. And so I think that's the big issue. And they're not going to get – why would Kirby Lee – he's making $14 million at Georgia. He runs the program. He's going to come in and work for a general manager? Seriously. That's what he's going to do? And,
no chance.
Jimmy Sexton had Adam Gase. I mean, his agents, they know the problems. That's the other thing. You can't hide the problems from the agents. Know Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick have the same agent. You don't think they know the problems?
Sexton was Douglas's agent.
Yeah, of course he was. You think he does?
So the big dog with all the web, he knows exactly what's happening inside that organization. That's a really tough spot right now for the Jets. I mean, it really is.
I don't know how they fix it. I really don't. And they're going to hire somebody. It's going to be very bureaucratic. They're going to go out. They're going to listen to the league office. They're going to list like they did. They hired Charlie Casserly to help them pick a coach. Charlie got his best friend, Mike McKagan, the job. And it's going to be completely screwed up. They won't interview the right people. They'll have Jed Hughes putting lists of names in. They'll hire some young guy who's never really built a team, who has no idea how to handle Woody or no idea how to handle the terrain of New York City. You're going to get the Joe Shane hire all over again, only it's going to be over at the Jets.
Yep, the Joe Shane, and we're going to talk about the Giants as we go to break, and we'll come back. GM Shuffle. If you're the front office, and we should talk about the history of the commissioner and specific franchises, the Giants, the Cowboys, the Jets, these matter to a league that is dominant in America and globally. And we'll discuss the Giants coming back because they've decided to bench Daniel Jones, and is Daboll coaching for his job? You hate to see it. I mean, the Jets are 3-8. The Giants are 2-8. The Cowboys, the most important franchise on the planet, are a disaster. And Michael says, time for a restart in Big D. We'll continue. GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Okay, GM Shuffle in Cleveland tonight, a place Michael Lombardi knows well. We've got the Steelers and the Browns. We'll get to that coming up in just a bit. This is not what Mr. Goodell does not like to see, the valued franchise like the Cowboys sitting 3-7. We'll get to that in just a bit.
Yeah.
And the Giants sitting 2-8. We just talked about the Jets sitting 3-8. How about the Giants 2-8, Michael? This is a broad franchise.
That's a great point you just made there. That's a great point you just made there. I don't think people understand the league's history enough. So there was a time when the league wasn't as profitable as it is today, where not every owner is making $400 million a year, regardless of the one-loss record. And Rozelle, when he was the commissioner, he had great pride in making sure certain franchises were successful, because he knew, because we didn't have YouTube TV, we didn't have, games on Thursday night, we didn't have all this. He knew the product, right, was the most important commodity that he had. So he had to assure himself that there were certain franchises that were operated within good standing. And it was important to him. I don't think he cared as much about some teams as he did the New York market, the Dallas market, the Los Angeles market, or the Raider market, right? He wanted those teams to be successful. So as we lend ourselves into the Giants, as the Giants have been so bad, and they were so bad for so long, when Wellington Mara was running the team with Tin Mara and they couldn't get along, Rozelle came in and basically brokered a deal that led him to George Young. He said, look, you got to hire this guy. This is the best guy. We're not looking for some young guy. This is the best guy. He's been around Shula. He's been with winning programs. He'll help you set up we'll fix your team, but you're going to give him the authority to do it. Like, Rozelle was very, very active in fixing franchises. And I think that element in sports today is gone, because these owners are making so much money that the commissioner, and I'm not blaming this on Goodell, I don't think he can come in and really kind of influence these franchises and change it. Like, I think they want certain guys out of the league. I'm sure they probably don't want Mark Davis owning the team. I'm sure they don't want Tepper having a team. I mean, they want to fix those, but their solution to fixing them is get another owner. They can't be happy with some of these owners based on what the product is. And I think the Giants and the Jets in New York, it affects the ratings. Let's be clear. It affects the product. And the Giants being this bad for this long, at some point, if Rozelle were alive, he would take his car service over to the Meadowlands and sit down with John Mara and basically say to John Mara, John, you're going to have to change. You're going to have to fix this. Either, it's the old line in The Godfather when Rocco comes over to Fredo and says, Michael told me either you fix it or I have to do it. And Fredo says, you better do it. Right? When his wife was going crazy, you better do it. Right? That's kind of what I think has to happen to the Giants. Like the commissioner has to get involved here. Like he's got to get involved and he's got to fix it. Because if you leave it to John Mara, he's not going to fix it.
Well, George Young into Ernie Accorsi, not exactly Dave Gettleman into Joe Shane.
Right. No question. And see, and Accorsi comes in with all the histrionics behind it. He knew it. I mean, Accorsi was not going to sit there Accorsi was a team builder. He studied team builder. I learned from Ernie, right? I watched Ernie work. Ernie was about the big picture. The minor details were not, Ernie could look through the minor details. It was about, we got to have a quarterback. We got to have this. We got to be right on this. We might make mistakes, but we got to be right on this. And he was very, very in tune to what won in the league, what you needed to have to beat the opponents in the league. Because Ernie studied all these baseball GMs during his career. He studied all these football guys. So he understood that. And I appreciated learning from him because you learn that. Whereas Joe Shane, he never even mentioned anything about that. Like Joe Shane's embarrassing. Like, I mean, Joe Douglas is better at his job than Joe Shane is. Because at least the Jets have more talent. I'm not saying he did a good job of team building, but here's the real problem with the Giants, and this is what's really wrong. The Giants have no standard of excellence. They do for the coaches. They don't for anybody else. Okay, and what do I mean by that? Well, because John Mara has never really changed the organization, and because he's a third generational owner, that, guys that have worked for the Giants, they stay there forever. They don't get fired. The kids come in, everybody, it's a family run business. And when you're a family run business, there's no standard that anybody's upheld to. Either you do your job good or you're gone, right? Either you have to do your job. We want this to happen. Whereas at the Giants, they don't have that. The video guys have been there forever. The trainers have been there forever. The equipment, all those people. And so it's institutionally bad. And John doesn't want to go in there and break some family's heart because he's compassionate in that area. So he just keeps changing coaches. And it never dawns on him that no matter what coach he brings in, the same problems that affected Joe Judge, that affected Pat Shurmur, that affected Ben McAdoo, are affecting Brian Daboll. Like the same problems. Their inability to be honest with themselves. Like that. If they called me on the phone and said, Michael, what's wrong with our team? The first thing I would tell John, what's wrong with your team is you can't evaluate your team. You misevaluate your own team. You can't evaluate your team. And what you need more than anything is a completely revamped organization. You need, like what George Young did for you, you need fresh ideas. You need a coach to come in here and say, we're going back to the Giant way, right? We're going to build it this way. We're going to be back to being a big physical. We're going to build teams this way. And they refuse to do it because what I think fans miss more than anything is that there's certain people, and I work for a man like this, that would rather win their way than just win. It's not about winning. It's about we got to win the way I want to win, right? And that's a big difference. Most fans are naively thinking that winning is what drives all these teams. No, winning the way I want to win. David Tepper wants to win his way. Jimmy Haslam wants to win his way. Like he doesn't want somebody winning. He wants to win, but he wants to be involved with the winning.
Pride's a bitch.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, when you stand on pride, which is ego and what you're talking about. Let me ask you this. We'll get to Daniel Jones and what the booking means with Tommy DeVito he's going to be the starter. Daboll, a report from Jordan Schultz that Daboll over the last 7 weeks, he is coaching for his job. Do you believe that to be true?
Has to be. I mean, I don't see how it isn't. I mean, how is John Mara going to go out to the public and sell that we've got this thing turned around? They're getting worse. They're getting worse. And you could see he's fighting for his job. I mean, they replaced Martindale with the new defensive coordinator. Have they gotten better in that area? No. Where have they improved this team over 3 years, Joe Shea? Are they more talented in the offensive line? Of course not. Do they have a better defensive line? Yeah. I mean, are they better in the secondary? No. I mean, Evan Neal can't play. The corner Banks isn't very good. The whole thing is broken. You know, it's just so, and it's not hard to fix, but you need somebody who's going to have the authority to fix it. You say, well, why wouldn't they just hire Belichick? Well, okay, Bill walks in. Now, Bill's better coach than McAdoo. He's a better coach than Shermer. He's a better coach than Judge. He's a better coach than Daboll. But the same problems that affected those four would affect Bill if he walked in the building. He still has no standard of performance by anybody in there. He's got a personnel department that has, I mean, you saw them on Hard Knocks. Does that look like a well-oiled personnel department to you? Not to
Wasn't a great look. No, wasn't a great look.
It was a horrible look, you know? And so, like, you think he's going to tolerate that? You think he's going to tolerate guys sitting around talking about, should we sign this guy or should we not? Of course not. Because he was trained there. He knows what you have to do to win. So, same thing with Vrabel. Look, to be the head coach of the New York Football Giants carries some cachet. It's a proud franchise. It's got great history to it. It's in the greatest city in the world. I know it plays in the Meadowlands, but it's important. And this goes back to what my point was. The commissioner needs to get involved. He needs to go talk. Now, the wild card in all this is the Tisch family, because they're 50% owners. They don't have controlling interest, but they're part owners of the team. They can't be happy, because one of the things that affects owners is when they go to their hangouts in New York and the Giants are this embarrassing. They can't tolerate that, right? So you're Steve Tisch, and you go and you own the Park Regency Hotel, and you're in the lobby having breakfast every morning there, and all your buddies come in and they're like, "Oh shit, your team sucks." That hurts more than the back page of the New York Post.
And Saquon was a big theme from Hard Knocks, and he's going to go on to win Offensive Player of the Year, so not a great look there. Daniel Jones, he's been benched. Can you just tell us quickly what that means? They're going to move on from Jones?
Well, they don't want to get stuck. See, they can't cut Daniel Jones. See, again, here's the worst place you want to be in football. And I've been there before. I've made these mistakes, so this is from experience. This isn't from arrogance. Is when you got a really shitty team and you got no cap room. I mean, 1 year in Cleveland, we were a really shitty team and we owed $10 million of fucking incentives. That's really embarrassing. You're paying incentives and you're not winning. That's really embarrassing. And so for me, this is a team that has no cap room and they got a shitty team. And so they can't cut Daniel Jones right now because the acceleration would be too much for him. So they've got to carry him. So they signed Tim Boyle. Now here's where Daboll loses all credibility. Dexter Lawrence has come out and said, I think Daniel Jones is still the best quarterback on our team. He is. There's no question about that. He is. Okay. So, but now you're going to put Tim Boyle in the game if you lose two of your quarterbacks. If you lose Locke and if you lose Tommy DeVito, you're not going to Daniel. You're going to Tim Boyle. You lose all credibility as a franchise with that. But you can't cut him because you have no cap room to cut him.
It's ugly in New York / Jersey. It's also ugly with the Cowboys. Let's quickly start. So the Cowboys get blown out at home again on Monday night. Last time we saw each other, they were about to play 34-10. The Texans put the beat down, 5 straight overall. We'll come back and discuss this on GM Shuffle. But you said when the season ends, you wrote this, Jerry has no choice but to hit restart.
He's got to. I mean, he's got a bad team. Look, here's the reality of it. When you go through the Cowboys defensive team, 9 of their 12 starters, and they're 12 starters now with their nickel corner, 9 of their 12 starters came from the draft. Parsons is the only one you'd sit there and say, wow, he's good. You could say Diggs is good. He doesn't look good anymore since the injuries. We got Bland may come back this week. But, okay, so you're talking about you're going to blame Mike Zimmer. You're going to blame the coaches. But I think their personnel isn't good enough. And I think one of the things that would have happened if he would have fired McCarthy after last year and hired someone from the outside, he would have got a reset. He would have had somebody with a fresh pair of eyes saying, we're not as good as you think, Jerry.
As you wrote, the marquee players take the focus off the rest of the roster in Dallas. We continue. GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Okay, GM Shuffle, we'll get to the big Week 12 games here. The big guy, Michael Lombardi. I'm Patrick Meagher as we welcome you back. So turn out the lights for the Cowboys. I thought it was a great article. You can check it out over at vsin.com, Michael Lombardi. And he said, look, the problem here with the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are the biggest franchise on the planet. All right. So, and Jerry Jones isn't getting younger. You said it's time to reset, but you also said their problem is their marquee players take the focus off the rest of the roster. Could you just elucidate a little bit on that? And then we'll get to a comment you made just a minute ago. And that is, you think some of these franchises are trying to get ahead of the curve as far as the coaches, and we can get to Dougie P. But just quickly, let's wrap up the Cowboys situation.
Well, I think what happens is because you have CeeDee Lamb, because you have Dak, you have all these, you have all these really good players. Parsons, right? You tend to think, well, they make everybody look a little bit better. But when you break it down and you got Macy Smith and, Golston and some of these other guys, you're not as good as you think you are. Well, I got the sneezes. I apologize. But anyway, so you don't think you're as good as you are. And some of the players like Zach Martin, he's at the end of his time. I mean, he's just not the same player he once was. Terrence Steele was always a liability, but they kind of worked a way around it. Now you can't work a way around it, and I think to me, that's the problem is sometimes when you bring in, I think one of the biggest mistakes teams make is they confuse loyalty and devotion, right? Every team wants you to be loyal to them. Like the Giants want loyalty. Jerry wants loyalty. Well, loyalty and devotion are two different things, right? Devotion means I'm going to tell you what you want to hear. Loyalty tells me what you need to hear. And so the league confuses this, right? You become ostracized by the league if you tell people what they want to hear. They don't want to hear it. You're being disloyal, right? You're just a disloyal human being. But if you devote it to them, I'm sure there was nobody at the Jets telling Joe Douglas his team was a sucks. Look at the Giants. They all think their team was good. They sat around that room in the Hard Knocks thinking they had a great team. You and I sat outside the room saying they suck, right? So I think to me, that's the biggest issue, right? Is that when you need somebody from the outside to tell you honestly about your team. You really do. You need kind of a balance. And I'm not saying I'm right all the time, although I've been right all the time on the Giants, but I'm not saying I'm right all the time. But to me, you need a fresh, and I think one of the things, if Jerry would have made a change, he would have brought somebody in, whether it would have been Vrabel, whether it would have been Belichick, whether it would have been whomever, that could have given him, because Mike is programmed, and this is not a knock on Mike. Mike's a loyal soldier, right? Mike has grown up in the Packer organization, Patrick, where he was told, these are your players. You coach them, right? Ted Thompson drafted him, you coach him, Mike. And that's all Mike did. Mike coached him, right? And so Mike didn't really push back. Mike's not pushing back on that. Whereas if you would have brought Belichick in, he would have said to Jerry the first day on the job, look, this guy isn't any good. We need this, we need that. We bada bing, bada boom. We need all these things. And that's what they're missing. And when you don't want to change, when you're 82 years old and you hate change and you want to eat the same thing every day and watch the same TV show, then you don't want somebody telling you how fucked up you are. It's just human nature. And if you don't embrace change, you're going to get killed.
But you said the key thing. Jerry's 82. We know how competitive he is. I have to ask you, will he take a swing? Do you think he'll ask for Belichick's conversation, and do you think Bill would ever go to Dallas?
I think to me that would require Jerry sitting on his airplane and having Bill sit down and then walk with Steven in the plane, walking through how it would work and what they would be willing to accept from Bill and what Bill would be willing to accept from them. And only those three could be privy to the conversation. But to me, knowing Jerry, and knowing Bill, It's going to have to be I mean, I don't know. See, part of the problem with hiring Bill is you want to have somebody who Bill needs his system around him. Bill's not a one-man parade. It's an operating system. And you need those players, or you need the coaches and the staff around them that know the operating system. Because remember, he's been fired twice now. He's been fired in New England. He's been fired in Cleveland. And what's happened in both places? The operating system got lost. For the longest time, he controlled the operating system in New England. The last 2 years, when Kraft came in and started telling him who to hire and what to do, and you can't keep this guy, you got to get rid of that, then he lost his operating system. Again, I'm not making excuses. The quarterback was horrible, all those things. We know that. But to me, I think that's really what can Bill needs. It's a leader needs his program, but he needs people in his program that know it. I learned this a long time. Walsh told me this in a car ride. He said, look, it's hard to retrain people. It's easier to train people. And that's the mantra that we've always lived with in this program is it's hard to retrain coaches how to think like Bill thinks. It's hard to retrain scouts how to think like we think. So it's better to train them. Will Jerry allow that? That's a hard question to answer.
However, these owners, and you said this, not picking on Dougie P, but his team gave up in Detroit. Defensively, they gave no effort. The Jets have started to give up, even defensively. But they look at somebody like a Harbaugh and say, oh, okay, you get the right guy. We can make this work. My assumption is the Jags are going to move on. My assumption would be the Bears are going to move on. Why aren't these teams doing it now, a la the Jets, to get out in front of it and start getting potentially their guy?
Well, I think they have to, right? Because I think, to me, the longer you wait, you lose assistants, you lose good people. The longer you wait, that becomes problematic for you because you still have to go through this whole set of hurdles to get to the guy, right? And I think one of the reasons why nobody has reached out, underline who's interested, Jacksonville. Jacksonville's got to put people in this $1.8 billion stadium. Who's going to do that? I mean, they're going to have a meeting with Belichick. Or Vrabel, because they're going to need some name appeal. Why did Jerry hire Parcells? He was trying to finish a stadium. He needed somebody to give him credibility. When these owners, Dean Spanos, why did he hire Jim Harbaugh? He needed credibility. When you hire a guy like that, you're buying credibility. That's what I say about John Mara. John Mara needs credibility. He doesn't have any right now, but he's unwilling to hire credibility to give up what he controls within the building. That's a dangerous thing. So I think, to me, Jacksonville's really being penny wise and dollar. I know they have nobody on the staff to be the who cares, right? Name anybody. Doug's running it has to be better than what Doug's doing, right? So hire somebody and let it move on.
Look, I can tell you that the Chargers barely resonate in Los Angeles. They had no appeal last year. There's a buzz here, and Harbaugh can do that.
Yeah.
That culture. And that's what the right hire can do for the organizations we're discussing, a la the Jags, who are going to be in a new stadium.
Yeah, 2 years from now, they're going to be in this huge new stadium. Who's going to buy the premium seats for that? Who's going to fill that stadium up? You're going to have some excitement to get people to go there. And you say, well, it's Jacksonville. It's a small market. They'll go. They went there when Tom Coughlin was the coach, and they had good teams. But if you don't build that team the right way, it's going to be damn near impossible.
So Week 12 kicks off Pittsburgh. And again, we can go back to the coaching theme. What Tomlin's done. Think about if you talk about coach of the year, you've got Tomlin, you've got Campbell, you've got O'Connell, you've got Gannon, you've got Quinn. I don't know how you discern. These are 5-6 people that are doing an exemplary job. And it starts with Tomlin, who goes tonight in Cleveland, laying 3.5 on the road. He's doing an amazing job.
And this is his albatross tonight, because the Steelers have not been good on the road on Thursday. They're 5-17 straight up. They're 9-13 against the spread since 1980. This has not been a game. And Mike Tomlin on Thursday night away from home is 0-7 straight up. So this is a challenging game for Mike. And one thing we do know about underdogs in the NFC North is that they beat up on one another. Right? They're 48-31 since 2018 against the spread. So this is a hard game. Now, conversely, we know Jameis Winston has never played in 40-degree weather or below. Never. Can you imagine that? Never. It's hard to imagine that. And so his delivery, he's got the smallest hands. Remember when he came out, he had really small hands. So this is going to be a wet ball night. It's going to be a cold night. The under's coming down for a reason. To me, the Browns can't run the football. The ball's going to be in Jameis's. Hey, through last week, they had 443 yards. They scored 14 points. You realize the Browns have never scored more than 18 points all year, except for the one game against the Ravens at home. They haven't scored more than 18 all year. Think about that. And so it's unbelievable. And the Steelers over the 5-game winning streak, they've only given up 17.8 points. So
by the way, they scored 18. They scored 18 on 6 field goals against the Ravens. So it's not like the offense is going up.
No, but here's where it's different, right? Where people say, well, Fields, look, Wilson averages 7.8 yards per attempt down the field. In his 4 games, he's thrown for 942. Whereas in the 6 games, Fields threw for 1,100. So they're getting more out of it. But what they're really getting out of Wilson is they've averaged 152 yards on the ground in the last 5 games. So they're able to run the football more effectively, and I think that makes a huge difference. This is going to be a hard game. All the trends tell you got to take the Brownies, right?
Yep.
And you hate to do that because I don't want to sit there and watch Jameis turn it over, right? I don't want to watch him turn it. He had 377 yards passing last week, and they could only score 14. It's the best passing day of the season for the Browns. But they just can't move. They can't put the ball in the end zone. They're going to do something stupid on 4th down. You know it, and I know it. It's going to drive me insane. They're going to go for it when they shouldn't, And look, they're just not a good team. They can't run the ball either. All this, so they fire Alex Van Pelt. They had a pretty good year at the end of the year, right? They fire Alex Van Pelt and they hire Dorsey. Have they gotten better?
No. And by the way, you Michael nailed it. The North, you blindfold yourself. You take the dog. You take the under. Look, it closed 48 on the total. The Steelers won 18-16, covered the 3. Tonight, we've been bet down from 41.5 down to 36.5. Could have a snow game. Most likely going to have a snow game, cold game in Cleveland. Question before, and we'll come back and talk about Week 12 matchups. Question, is Stefanski in trouble?
I don't know if he can be in trouble. He just won Coach of the Year last year. This is all his fault. I mean, they made him fire the quarterback. They made him do all this. I think it's on the owner. I can't imagine them doing that. But, they got so much money in Cleveland, I don't think they care.
All right, Big Daddy alert when we come back. GM Shuffle. Green Bay. Here comes San Francisco. Green Bay laying a 1.5. We'll discuss that. GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome back to the GM Shuffle, presented by Smirnoff. We do game days. Please drink responsibly. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. He's the big guy, Michael Lombardi. I'm Patrick Meagher. We've been working together a long time. We say it every year, and I'll just repeat myself. How the hell is it Week 12 already? Can we just slow down? How is Thanksgiving coming?
I know.
God damn it, can we slow down, people? But we do have
so football. I know. And before we know it, we'll be counting the days in March, and I'll have to watch Embiid play, and I'll have to watch that bad 76er team play and have all that. I mean, how about people actually shocked that he's late for meetings? Can you imagine that? I've been saying, how long have you known me, Patrick? I've been saying this. Have I called this one or not? I mean, seriously, I'm going to pat myself on the back here. Have I called this giant loser out? I've been calling him out for how long now?
Nonstop. Before it was
so
hip to do.
It's so obvious that you're never going to win with this guy. It's so obvious that you can't build a team around a loser like this. It's just sad, and they're wondering why. I mean, they're all going to get fired. Morey's going to get his ass fired. Nurse will get fired. He'll destroy them all.
Hold on. You mean you didn't like the idea of a team meeting 13 games into a season, then off the team meeting, they go to Memphis and get beat, and Paul George leaves with a hyperextended knee? You didn't like that for your 76ers?
No, and I'm actually shocked that Paul George got hurt. I mean, come on. This again is exactly what I said. I thought the best part of that article, Patrick, was when they wrote in there that the players went to Nick Nurse and said they wanted to be coached harder. And Nick Nurse said to the players, well, you need to practice harder. Well, that to me is exactly what's wrong with their franchise. They have basically enabled the players. They're run by the analytical department. So everything's load management. We're not going to practice today. We're going to rest. Players need to rest. They have no continuity. They have no conditioning. They have no fundamentals. They can't work. It's impossible. This is exactly what's wrong with them. That paragraph is, and so they've enabled Embiid to be this lazy, could give a shit guy, and they've enabled the whole this franchise is this. This is exactly what I've been complaining about. This is why they're so bad. It's not just Embiid. They enabled Embiid. It's everybody.
Hey, he's done a lot for the city.
Buddy Hield is having a career year at a Golden State. He's probably, if you gave him thank God I don't have to play with that guy anymore. You can't play with Embiid. They had the Olympic team this year, and they couldn't put players around him on the Olympic team. It's impossible. How do I see it? No one else does. Well, people are seeing it now. But how does Daryl Morey not see it? He's kidding himself.
It's the Spider-Man meme with the front office and the coaching staff pointing at the players and the players pointing back at them. That's not a great look for an organization. All right, week 12, let's do it. Big Daddy alert, speaking of Thanksgiving. He's going to come to the crib, and he's going to be complaining about Matt LaFleur, though his Packers are 7-3. Here comes the 49ers. Like this matchup with the Pack, laying 1.5 here, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is going to be an interesting game. When you go through Jordan Love, he's not having the same year he had last year. His on-ball target has decreased, right? He's not throwing the ball with the same accuracy. He's got too many bad throws. He's got 11 interceptions. He's making too many mistakes. And the Packers lead the league in drop passes. Their execution hasn't been great. They have great talent offensively, but at the end of the day, their execution is why they've struggled, why they're 7-3. They've got to really improve that after starting this week against San Francisco. And I think San Francisco is just not the same team. They're beaten. They're battered. I think really, to be honest with you, nobody wants to say it, but McCaffrey's not the same player. He averages 3.9 a carry. Jordan Mason they need more Jordan Mason. They need to put McCaffrey in the game. I'm not suggesting that, but they missed the power of that. And I think this is a huge game. Weather's not going to be a huge factor. It's going to be in the 40s. No snow, I don't think, here for the game, but it's going to be a hard game for the 49ers defense. I mean, remember the playoff game? Aaron Jones was sensational at 18 for 103. But what happened in that game? Jordan Love, fourth quarter. He had 3 first downs. Right? They had a punt, they had an interception, and they had a missed field goal in the fourth quarter, or else they're going to beat the 49ers when the 49ers were much better than they were last year. I think it's hard to really think about the Niners right now because they're not the same team.
Speaking of the Niners, week 12, and Arizona sits atop the NFC West. Jonathan Gannon, got to give them credit. Done a hell of a job. They're 6-4. They're 2-0 in division, and they're headed to Seattle. Depending on the book, we'll call it a pick'em. Arizona at the Seahawks.
Yeah, I mean, great game. Look, Seattle can't play run defense, and Arizona can really run the football effectively. I think this is going to be a back and forth type of game. Look, Seattle's a nickel offense, really. When they can get you tired and you can't rush, then Geno's going to really be really good effectively. You got to get a hold of them, Jigba. I mean, the last drive of the 49er game, it was Geno Smith running and then Jigba. That's what hurt them in that game, and they've got to be able to do a good job on this one. And then we got to figure out where Kyler Murray is with the weather. When he went to Green Bay and it was raining, he did not look good that week against the Packers. The Packers jumped all over him. I think this is going to be really difficult. It seems to me like whenever they play against a good team, Kyler's against a good team that understands how to handle the rush, that he struggles. I think it's going to be really good for Seattle to control them in the pocket. But Seattle has not been a good home team this year. They're 1-5 against the spread. They haven't played at all very good there. And really, since the beginning of last year, Geno's 3-10 against the spread. Worst mark of any quarterback in the league.
So we've got 2 really good primetime games, and they're both here in Los Angeles. The first one coming up Sunday night, Philly at the Rams. So Philly's on a heater right now. They're 8-2. Some of the, I guess, hate on Sirianni has chilled a little bit. The Rams need it, Michael. They're 5-5. And right now, Philly's laying 2.5, though there are 3s in the market as well. Let's talk Eagles-Rams.
Well, I mean, look, this Ram front's pretty good. I thought the Rams weren't as good defensively against the Patriots. Moved the ball up and down the field in that game. And obviously May overthrow the interception May has at the end of the game there was, I still can't figure out what route they were running or what they were doing on that play. But for me, I think this is really a game about, can the Eagles control the ball and keep Stafford off the field? I think the Rams offensive line started to play really good. They didn't play good against Miami 2 weeks ago. They played really good against New England's front, which is very good. And Stafford was sensational. Can he play 2 weeks in a row at the same level? Can they run the football? One thing I think it's really interesting to note about the Rams is the Rams have become more like the Patriots offense than they have actually the Sean McVay offense. If you really watch it closely and you understand what the Patriots do, they are more, they're not just running that wide, tight zone and wide zone. They're doing different things that more inclined to what Brady wanted to do. It's interesting how Sean has shifted without telling anybody how much he shifted. I think
Isn't that the brilliance of him? Is that the science like McVay? And that's what you call him anomalous.
It's right, because he could take an idea from somewhere else and incorporate it into his idea, which is brilliant, right? Most people steal ideas. They just take the play and take the play. He incorporates it in there. I mean, he had a great play last week where he brought in, Puka Nacua. He put him through the C gap like he was going to release, like he was a tight end going through the offensive line, and then he brought him on an over route. He had the Patriots completely confused, and it ended up being like a 30-yard game. But to me, I never underestimate McVay against like Vic Fangio. I think he'll do a good job. I lean towards taking the points here in the Rams.
Okay, quickly, Detroit, they're laying 7.5 on the road. A shout to Elliott. Did pick up a big win in Jersey with Richardson playing well in the fourth. But Detroit right now is a wagon, Michael. They're not interested in taking their foot off the gas. They're covering. They're winning. They're a monster. That offense is all time.
Yeah, they're good at controlling the line of scrimmage, and we know the Colts have a hard time playing the run. We know that going in. This is going to be a fascinating game for Anthony Richardson, because I thought last week running the single wing, running the six-back offense, he was very good. And he threw the ball in the middle of the field. They separated the defense. I thought he did a really good job in that area. Can he do 2 weeks in a row? Can he be consistent throwing the ball down the field? Alex Anzalone not playing. They signed David Long, which I thought was a good signing for Miami. Cut him. He's an undersized linebacker, but he gives them more speed on their defense. But this is a game up against Goff on the road. Can he play well? Can he throw the ball effectively? They're going to protect well enough. There's no question. I think that's going to be the key to the game. I never want to step in front of this Detroit Lion train, though. I really don't. 7.5 seems like a lot. I felt like it's a lot. I had it right at 7.2. So I think it's the right number. I probably stay away from this game.
Another dome game for my Lions. Let's go. Okay, it's time for the DraftKings bet highlight here on the GM Shuffle. It's a great game. Baltimore at the Chargers, and Baltimore 2.5. There are shops showing 3. What do you got here?
I just think, Chargers are a great story, right? I think we saw them in the second half, how they muscled back up and played Cincinnati. But you play Lamar coming off a loss, I think it's hard. And on that carpet, that fast track out in Los Angeles, I think it's even more challenging. Where the Chargers gain an advantage, they're great in the red zone. They don't give up a lot of points, but this is a different team that they're playing. I think they're going to be able to attack them and take advantage of their defense a little bit. And then can the Chargers? The Chargers are going to take advantage of this Raven. Think about it. The Ravens are the only team that allowed the Browns to score more than 20 points all year. They scored, and they're 28 points, and the Browns lost that. But I thought the Ravens were playing better defensively last week. They're going to need to play better. I like the Ravens here. I'm going to lay the points with the Ravens, because I think this is a game they have to have. They desperately need this one. They really do. They can't go on any losing streak, or Pittsburgh's going to keep lapping them.
And before we get out of here, just randomly, Peyton's done a great job. The Broncos are laying 6.5, and Tom's going to have to hire a new coach with your Raiders.
Yeah, look. And remember now, the trend has always been that the Raiders have always beaten them. I think this is the last time they won was the first time in 13 games. The Raiders have always dominated this series until Antonio Pierce showed up. Wonder what the connection is there. I thought the Raiders were better offensively last week. They were able to move the football, but defensively, they can't stop anybody. They're just not as good. They've gotten worse on defense over the year with the defensive head coach.
All right. Well, the Ravens laying the 2.5. You can find 2.5. That's presented by DraftKings as our bet highlight. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Okay, Michael, week 12. And quickly, before we get out of here, in division, Would you take the 3.5 with the Browns hosting the Steelers tonight? It's going to snow.
I think I'd lean that. I would just lean that way. I would be. I think you have to stick with it. If you took the trends last week with Tomlin against the Ravens, I think you got to take the trends this week in the Browns. I think you can't avoid it. I think there's too much data to avoid it.
Okay, Michael, a lot of Joe Douglas talk, more than you all even know today. We'll see you on Monday on the GM Shuffle. Have a good day, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.